trying to recap what it is we're trying to do with these panel workshops. I'm not sure they kind of fall somewhere between the two. We had a general view that we've now got, I think, 75 members in MT UK. And if you have sort of like, if they all share a common thread, it's their entrepreneurs and founders who are kind of like trying to work their way through how they envisage, build and grow a business and take it to market. That seems to be the common thread. Yeah. And what we're trying to do in these sessions is look at the challenges that impact us as founders. I'm a founder, we're all founders in some way, and try and discuss them from a couple of different perspectives. One, we'll bring some leading people in music technology companies to lay themselves bare in front of us. And today we're very lucky to have Emilie from Beatport and Sophie from DAACI, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves in a minute. And then we back that up with an external impartial expert, and we're Rob from Diverge, who previously at Rabbit and Hare has agreed to do that for us this time. And the format's kind of going to get the team to introduce themselves, going to ask Emilie and Sophie a couple of questions. Rob's then basically going to go and give some observations on that and maybe ask some questions from him as a branding expert. And then my role is to kind of like ask how much does it cost? How quickly are you going to do it? Those sort of base questions. Yeah. And then we'll roll through a few different topics. And then at the end, we've got time for questions for yourself. I think that we've broken this conversation down into sort of like 5 areas, really: business identity, core audience, messaging, brand image, and tone. But in reality, they're all kind of wrapped into one. If the conversation goes off in a particular direction, then we're just going to let it if we think it's of value. But fundamentally, we're going to try and get into how do you describe what you do when you spend half of your time describing what you do to a business to business and half of the time trying to describe what you do to a consumer. Yeah. How do you try and encapsulate the way you explain what you do and then convey that with your image and your tone and your messaging in some way that feels like it makes some sort of sense? So that's the objective of the session. So I think I'm going to go from left to right on my screen, and I'm going to ask Sophie to introduce herself first, then Emilie, and then Rob.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, hello everyone, and thanks for having me. I'm Sophie. I am the consultant comms director with DAACI, which is a music tech company that I'm hoping some of you have come across already. And I'm stepping in today actually for our CEO, Rachel. But I'm glad to be here because I've been really involved in DAACI's comms journey pretty much from the beginning when we hit the public with our messaging. So I'm hoping I can give some insight into that journey and the challenges that we had. So yeah, glad to be here.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, Emilie. I'm sorry. Sorry, Emilie.
Do you want to say something?
Yeah, no, please go.
Hi, I'm Emilie. I'm the VP of Marketing at the Beatport Group. I've been here for 2 years, and previous to that, I worked at Yamaha Music on European customer experience and their global brand. So I'm really excited to chat with you all and yeah, learn some insights as well.
And Rob?
So I'm the co-founder of design experience at Diverge, Rob Ryan. I basically, probably why Simon's asked me, is I'm just in the process of merging Rabbit and Hare with Diverge. I'm partnering with the universal client, basically, Andy Davies, who's Vice President of Commercial Technologies. I've worked with him for 10 years, so it kind of seemed like a good kind of marriage, given that we've never argued. Yeah, so it's been an interesting time, particularly on branding, but we'll get to that point.
Brilliant, thank you all. So the first question I'm going to ask, really, and we'll start with Emilie, is if I use the word Beatport to your customers, what would they say to me?
Oh.
Yeah. So if I said to them, "What's Beatport?" What are they going to say? What's your perception of what they're going to say?
Well, great question. We actually did some research last year into what our audiences think about us as a brand. They would say we are a reliable source of music for them to be able to DJ. So they would probably say it's interesting to get information from our artists and our communities through our platform called Beatport. And they would probably say they are electronic music enthusiasts that are looking to expand their musical like tastes, because we do 32 different genres in Beatport. So there's always an abundance of music across 12 million tracks, so they can constantly find new music.
So when you take that and you hear that, does that fit in with where you want to be perceived? Is that something that are you looking at that and you're going, okay, but really we want to be seen as being this? How do you take that against your sort of like business goals?
So we're in a very strong position in the sense of like we have certain core values that our consumers really kind of connect with. They know that we're reliable, so they're always going to be able to get music from us. They know that we provide high quality, especially within music, so they're always going to be able to get that from us. Things that we've been building upon in the last couple of years are other aspects of our core values as a brand, our DEI initiatives, our sustainability initiatives, so that we can create more of a total offering for our customers.
And is it 20 years old, a Beatport now?
20 years, yes, as
20
of
years old, okay. So a lot of that things that you're talking about are as a result of the fact that you've been trusted and you've been around for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, Beatport started out being a platform which was made by DJs for DJs. So it was all about this kind of like community building. It's always been at the heart of everything that we do. And the customer is always at the center point of everything we do. So the fact that we continue to put them and kind of like highlight not just, members of our community or our users, but also our artists across our digital platforms, it really kind of showcases the fact that, we exist for those DJs. That's the primary, almost like functional element of our brand. And then the emotional element of our brand is that, people feel inspired to practice and play out to either their friends, their families, or even to sets in like festivals or in gigs. And, we provide all those tools and services so that, we kind of enable that to happen for them.
Brilliant. Thank you. So Sophie, you're kind of like right at the other end of your spectrum, really, where you're just, I mean, I know you've been around for a few years as a company, but in the last year, you've become a thing. If I was to ask people what they thought DAACI was, what do you think they'd say?
I love this. No, you're right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did say this was going to be the first question.
Yeah, you're right. And this is what this is all about, especially talking startup land. If you'd asked me that question, even just a few years ago, and we thought, what would our audiences say about us? I think they would have gone, DAACI, who? Like, what? Because we weren't on the landscape. And that was, task number one, wasn't it? I remember coming in and saying, okay, comm strategy, empty board up there on the wall. Who's our audience? You get them into your little circles on the board. What do we want to say to them? And I tell you what, it's written, it's so classic for this question. The key message, all we need everyone to know, DAACI exists. And that was it. We just wanted to be out there. So now you're looking at us, years later, really, and only a short few years later. If you asked our key audiences now, I'd hope they'd say, oh, it's that team of people. I know them. I think I would love if I could hear them speak about the people. We've got Sam chatting at the same time. But it's a case of basically trying to get a team.
Yeah, there's like 4 people with one.
Sam, I think you're on your speaker still.
Put Sam on mute.
Cheers.
I can't do that. I'm not the host, Matt.
Yeah, sorry,
Yes.
I'll get onto that.
No worries.
Yeah, sorry, Sophie.
That's all right. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I didn't want to talk over Sam. It sounded like an important call. But yeah, we basically now, I hope, are known as a team of people. It was important actually for us, and that was a very strategic goal, was to be known as humans, the people behind, because we knew that we'd be doing some objection handling with AI. And I'm sure we'll talk about those challenges coming up, but a team of people who are working and creating assistive tools and being on our audience's side, you know, like, oh, that's the ones doing that really well. Yeah, for me. Yeah.
So you've got that thing. So okay, so we're a team of people, and then the next, so kind of like people think that, hey, it's the guys from DAACI, they're at the Great Escape. Yeah. They then go, and then the next question is they go, what do you do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why.
Where are you on that? Where are you on that at the moment in your journey? And
yeah, so again, really interesting. And I think it is a journey. So if I was talking to someone in a startup, you know, that's sort of top tip number one, is it's a journey. You're not going to get the strategy one and done, right? And just roll out and, oh, we know our audiences, we know what their fears and wants are, and it's sorted. So it's changed over the time. When we first started out, we were saying that we were a music tech company. We were talking about, you know, DAACI stands for definable aleatoric. We were talking about IP patents and stuff, because we were placing ourselves as the technological leaders in this space, but that was for a very specific goal. Now that we're branching more towards the public and composers, artists, creators, we're really, really talking about it being assistive tools that you can use and that are on your side. So we're now known, and funny enough, Emily, you picked up on that great word, community, because as soon as we took our work to, people used to ask for the buttons, right? Like, what can I press? Where's the tech? DAACI was all conceptual academic research, 30 years of it based in what wasn't called AI then. And now we've got plugins, we've got buttons you can press, and we really, really worked hard to create a community around that from day one, so that the people that are giving us feedback on the beta, for example, are actually giving us information, telling us what they want, and we're responding to that in real time, and it's collaborative. So that's, again, it's us. DAACI is like, oh, it's my team, I'm part of that. It's not something being done to me.
Brilliant, thank you. I'd like to pick up later, remind me if I don't, about how far ahead you're planning about what you think the product is going to be, because you've spoken there about, we did that deliberately, we did that specifically, you know, it's different. Probably,
yeah, totally.
Beatport were probably in that situation, you know, 10, 15 years ago, where they were going, now we need to expand to do that. Rob, so the first sort of like, my first takeaway with that for Beaver, this is, you know, brand is to do with everything. Yeah, it's kind of like to do with everything, really. Yeah. So sort of like picking that theme up, and you know, when we spoke yesterday in the sort of the pre-call, you said a phrase to me like, brand is always on, or brand is continuous. I can't remember the actual phase. What would be your observations for what you've heard from Sophie?
Yeah, well, it's I think it in terms of, I guess, to start with Rabbit and Hare. So initially that kind of core idea was about community. And this, I mean, this will probably, it was something I really wanted as a dream, but basically the Rabbit and Hare came about because we wanted that community. And then we were thinking, could we have a pub as an office, and then have the downstairs bit as kind of like this hub for clients and friends of friends? So that would be deep rooted within the agency, if you like. And then, you know, then all the office work was upstairs, basically. So it was just, it became, I guess I've got a slide on it, this life flow, basically, which is essentially workflow. Nothing separates your home life from your work life. It all melds into the same thing, ultimately. And, you know, that was kind of where we're going with that brand, if you like. Diverge, yeah, the core element to that is that both Andy and I are neurodiverged, and we kind of come up with lots of different ideas, and we kind of, those strands and things come out into idea-based projects. So yeah, it's that kind of like rationale has to be applied throughout. You can't just sort of bolt on bits without bringing it back to the core idea. if you like.
So that then, that feeling of what you are as a thing, and most founder businesses are started because a founder's got a thing,
Yeah,
an itch they want to scratch,
yeah.
you know, right at the beginning, because you need to want to scratch that itch to be bothered to do it. So you're going, okay, this is the thing that we are, and then you're sort of going, okay, how do you then, and I'd like to go back to Emilie, and I'd like you spoke earlier on about you like to bring your DJs across your multiple platforms. I'd like to maybe talk a bit about, you've got these multiple platforms, you've got maybe the same or slightly different audiences. How do you start to think about audiences differently for your different sort of segments? And then I'm going to think, like you talk about, really, we'll roll this into one. How do you message to them? Yeah, and how important is that first sort of like sentence of this is what we do, basically?
Okay. Let me break that out into the two different places, which is audience and messaging. So when I started at the company a couple of years ago and we started talking about our audience and who our audiences are, there was a lot of different thinking around who our audiences were. People were segmenting them by demographics, by geographics, by behavioral, and there was no real core understanding of who they are. And traditionally, a lot of people lean towards demographics, which I don't believe is a very good way of approaching an audience, because, you know, you could be 35 and you could like completely different things. And the example I always give is the Prince of Wales and the Prince of Darkness, or shall I say now the King and the Prince of Darkness, both the same age, both are grandparents, totally different people. Ozzy Osbourne and King Charles, absolutely completely different people, but the same age. So I don't like to use demographics as a key point of reference. And there are around about 7 different methodologies when it comes to segmenting customers. And you would normally go towards something that's like psychographic or behavioral traits. And at that time, our data was going through a rehaul and we didn't have like a lot of the information. So the next best thing for us was looking at a segmentation theory called the benefit sort of your products and services. And this for us was the most beneficial because it allowed us to think about our customers by the level of proficiency. And
Right.
so when we started to think about grouping them by similar wants and needs, and that's how we're supposed to think about our customers, we group them by like a beginner or an artist. And we went from having like 400 different ways of segmenting our customers down to 4. And so it really helped to bring the businesses together, whether they're a producer or a DJ. It really helped us to think about them in a way of what are their core wants and needs, and then how can we then deliver on that? And that's how we built our whole core like marketing principles based off of their core needs.
So across your 7 platforms or your 7 services,
Mhm.
are you saying you'll go to it on your know? I'm on a beginner level here. I'm an artist level here.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know what the
So
other. Yeah.
we have B2B and B2C. So our B2B business is predominantly servicing our labels and artists, and we think of them in a very different way because it's very business orientated. So we actually group them in a more a financial way. And with our B2C customers, it's more about the benefits. So when we think about a producer, for example, a music producer, they could be in their beginner phase, and a beginner producer has a different life cycle to a DJ beginner. A DJ beginner is probably around about 3 months, whereas a beginner producer is around about 18 months, purely because of the level of competency that is needed to feel confident to use the tools, whether you're a DJ or a producer. And so there's like different timelines, but effectively all of the things that are needed for a beginner are the same. They all need education, they need hand-holding through the process, they like to be inspired, they like to be entertained. And so there was these core attributes that we could pull together so that we could then service our customers more effectively. So we partnered with, for example, Pete Tong's DJ Academy, who offer beginner like DJ sessions. We also partnered with some communities such as Future Female Sounds to create like women specific educational pieces for DJs. And so there's lots of ways in which we can then start to like bring together our total offering for that particular customer segment.
So you're going, we're Beatport, we're trust, we're reliable, we're quality. This is what we mean to you at your stage in your exploration of our world.
Well,
And so you develop your message, or do you then take the same messaging across all of those different kind of segments of customers? How do you handle that?
so our messaging is very similar, but tailored differently depending on the proficiency
Yeah.
level. So if you're an artist, I'm not going to talk to you as if you're a beginner. So artists also have different wants and needs to beginners. Artists would want to know, hey, how can I get my music more like streamlined? How can I connect with others and do sessions? How can I like distribute my music more effectively through Beatport? How can I get on your Instagram channel or Beatport, or, you know, so all of these things totally different. So the way in which our core messages are always like the same: inspiration, education, and education and entertainment. We always have those three core pillars because that's just how we've kind of pulled it together at the moment. But ultimately they are different depending on the customer. So if it's a beginner, it's more like, hey, come into our world. We're actually about to launch a campaign in the next week called You're Already a DJ. It's specifically aimed at beginner DJs, because actually when beginners think about DJing, the barrier to market is the product that you're going to use, like the hardware. It's really complicated. People go, oh, I'm kind of turned off by that. But there's so many people out there who create playlists, and there are people who are creating playlists for their nephew's 5th birthday or for their auntie's 35th anniversary, right? They are actually DJs, they just don't know it yet. So the most complicated thing is actually putting together a playlist which makes sense, as opposed to using the hardware. So as part of that kind of core messaging, it's more like, hey, you know, we're here, we're an open community, we're all friends, we're all kind of like helping each other. It's a very emotionally supportive community as well. And the beauty of DJs is that everybody's supporting each other. And every time I go to a gig or a show or a festival, DJs are like, hey, how you doing? Like, they're all high-fiving each other. Loved your set. It was great. Here's a new track, yada, yada, yada. And people want more part of that because they love the kind of the aspect of that community and what it brings. But they also love the fact that they're creating something. And it's that creation and that emotional kind of feeling that you get when you are sharing something with others. That is the point where you go, I feel like I've connected.
And links back to the core brand that you were talking about, Sophie. So your target audiences, how you think about messaging to those people. And I say this from looking at in the last year, I think I've seen your website change 3 times with slightly different messaging. I now know that those were deliberate things that were being done at appropriate times, rather than schizophrenic, confused identity. And that
was on the board at some point, but there was definitely a plan there. No, it's really great to hear Emilie describing it that way. I wanted to pull it back to the audiences. There's something that I think it's important for us to speak about, especially when we've got founders of companies and startups on, is the company values. If you can define those and make sure that they are absolutely the DNA of the company from the top down, then you already know what you want to say a lot of the time to your audiences, and it comes across as authentic because it is. So my top number 1 rule is tell the truth, be honest, and really brings that from the values down. So that was the first thing we were doing when we were like, you know, we've got our audience, we know who we want to talk to, what do we want to say? Well, we want to say that we're innovative. One of our true core values and behaviors is innovation, being at the forefront of everything that is happening in this space. So our website, okay, are we doing it in an innovative way, or are we just doing a sort of standard template of a thing? Our social media, are we speaking or creating things and messaging? Our tone of voice as well, making sure that we're actually consistent with that. So it was really interesting to sort of define the values and then to filter those at the top through to the audiences we want to speak to.
And so the audiences you're trying to target now, how do you know, have you got 2? Have you got 2 audiences? Have you got you know, I mean, have you got consumers? Have you got businesses? Have you got academia? What are your sort of like audience buckets?
So to describe it, I wish I had my board up to describe it, but we've got a level of, again, B2B and B2C. If we think about it, we're also talking to investors. So everything that we do is our shop window. We're on display for that as well. And that's very important as startups to think about what's the real goal here in our business goals and our strategy. So we have then the level of B2B where we're talking to companies that we want to maybe create partnerships with. But there's also the organizations like the PRS, or we did the educational initiatives with ASCAP, the American Society for Composers and Producers, which got us in front of the audiences in America as well. So we have the B2B, but then if we took the B2C a little bit more, which is very much the generative work that we're doing, we're looking at composers who may be very top, like film level composers. Now, when you go to them and you say, we're going to take all of the hard work away and the tinkering, then they say, well, you're taking away my craft, right? You're taking away my skills and replacing it with this fast, making it something. That's a fear. That's actually, that's not a bonus to them. That's one of their deepest fears, maybe, right? So we're identifying that. And then we've got absolute creators who have a passion for music and maybe need that assisting, and they feel like it's a mystery world that they're never allowed into, this kind of elitist level of music composition that they might never be able to crack without doing a PhD and 35 years of work. So we've got to branch that fear as well.
And so you're going to be then, I would assume, in a very similar situation to Emilie, where you're going, okay, these distinct audiences have got distinct needs that are going to, and you're just going to, under the umbrella, you're going to tailor your messaging for those individual.
And I'll tell you what we did. I'll tell you in actual practical terms what we did. Got the team together. So this is all stakeholders, founders, inventors, a CEO, top C-suite people, through to our coders. And we got the Post-its out and we said, you sit here and you're talking to a person in the pub. Tell me what their fears are. Tell me what you'd say to them. You're here talking to a top level composer. What's their fear and what are they going to be worried about? And then what are we going to say to them? And then we even said to one group, you're talking to an investor or a business stakeholder. What do they want to hear? And what are they worried about with the risk here? And we literally did it. I recommend doing that really as a team-wide exercise, because what that covered was not only did we then cover messaging to our audience out there and to our top level investor audience, we also got the team in a cohesive way on board with our messaging, because they wrote it. They were on board with it from the start. And I think it's a really good example to show that this is important. What we say is important. How we say it is important. It's not just someone's job in a room to write a tweet or something. This is us. This is what we do. This is, and we call it the DAACI way. This is how we roll. And we set that out.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I'm now going to go to Rob and I'll go, okay, so you've got two potential clients here. We've got some things that are pretty similar. They both know that they believe in what they're doing, and they've got some culture and some ethics and some principles which they're putting through to their brand. They've got the target audiences, and then they come to you and they go, I need a brand identity and I need messaging that fits within that. And my only experience has been, every time I've been through this exercise, not doing what we've just spoken about, it's been a failure. And it's not been a failure in the first instance. It's been a failure 6 months down the line, where I realized I've lost any sight of any guiding principles of what it meant I was trying to achieve. And when I go through that process, you've got some tent poles to hold on to as you build. So can you really just talk us through your observations and thoughts on that, and where you would take people? And I'd maybe like to get into stuff like, you know, maybe a conversation with you and Emilie on the concept of umbrella brands and maybe sub brands, because they've got multiple platforms. You know, I'd like to explore that a little bit, for you to be talking with Sophie about, is it the same thing to all of these people?
Yeah, I mean, Emilie, I don't know whether any of you guys noticed, but not once did she mention age. Now, most of the time people pick up age in your actual sort of profiling, but for us, and it's brilliant that she didn't bring that up at all, because really it's all around desire for the product and it's all around needs for the product. So it's all needs based. Shouldn't be via age. You have to kind of create those, I guess, personas, if you like, based on where somebody is at any one stage. And so we do often come up with challenges where people have, a set of values that they want us to apply. And when you go into this kind of this journey with them, and you're bringing back their values to the story, if you like, with whatever it is we're doing. It can often be the kind of, it's very easy for people to jump off that track, if you like. It doesn't always go 100%, but I think, yeah.
And is that because, in your opinion, they're misrepresenting themselves, or they kind of like the values aren't values, they're just things they think that sound good, so when they're tested, they become morphed to something else?
I mean, the kind of like the drive has to come from the top down, and I think sometimes people don't 100% believe in what's been put into this kind of like branding document, if you like. It's clear to me that, you know, between Emilie and Sophie, that they're absolutely on that train, you know, but it's, it just feels like it's kind of, we can kind of help develop and move them on. But it has to be, you know, there has to be that desire from a business perspective. So,
and then maybe then I'd like to a little bit of a conversation, starting with Sophie this time, thinking about the native beats consumer. So DAACI, Natural Beats, sorry, I got that wrong. Natural Beats. They've got a product called Natural Beats, which is AI, drums and percussion.
Natural drums, there you go.
Natural drums, there you go. Okay, yeah. Well, exactly. And that's not, I'm not, you know, and you've got, I would imagine, communication and marketing that you're doing out to third parties that you're looking to integrate your technology into their technology, and that's kind of like as polar apart as you can. Can you maybe just talk a little bit through, you said, okay, we're going to go and give this a sub brand, Natural. I think that's the idea. Natural is the sub brand that you're then going to promote as its own thing. Can you talk about that and why you decided to do that, and why that wasn't DAACI drums?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Again, if we go back slightly back in time to the start of the journey, there was a very much an element of the meetings that we were having a few years ago when we announced, you know, DAACI exists. We got the message out there, and it was all theoretical. It was all academic, or it was all tech that our goal at the time was perhaps to be integrated into. So we were shopping out to major partners, looking for partners that would partner with us to incorporate and develop this, and then it could be applied to anything. It still can. That's our major offering, is the sort of DAACI framework, if you like. So it's tech that's applicable in any environment, whether it's gaming or compositional tools, etc. And as Rachel, the CEO, was out and about and meeting people like yourself and doing the panels and doing the workshops, etc., it became more and more evident that people were really wanting to get their hands on something and be able to see that end, you know, the DAACI button. What can I do to touch it and to use it? And it was not that it wasn't part of our plans, but we brought that forward. We brought that forward and created that. What we didn't want to do, though, was say that's DAACI. Because what that would mean is that then the tech that is available, that is the DAACI brain, if you like, and the framework that we've created would perhaps be defined as that. So what we did was looking again at that messaging and wanting to create this element of, so we launched the Natural series, which is actually a set of different plugins and tools, adaptive and generative, that showcase, if you like, our tech into products that you can get your hands on, depending. So for example, if you're a music global sync license holders, you can get Natural Edits, was actually the first one to come out, and that's completely different to Natural Drums, which is a plugin that you stick into your DAW and it works seamlessly with your work that you're already doing. And then we've got natural things coming along, and it's all building towards this suite.
And do people find out about the Natural series by going to DAACI.com, and are they marketed under DAACI, or do you market and push them as their own things that happen to be powered by DAACI? How do you make that sort of decision?
That's really interesting, because that's also the partnerships that we work with. So it will be both. We're certainly developing the ability, and you've hit the nail on the head. Powered by DAACI is the way forward, because we can take our tech and have like agnostic desire to go towards developing any partnership and have it powered by DAACI. What that means is our tech is bringing your platform to life, whether that's your licensing or whether that's your structure that you've already got for a door, for example. So yeah, we're bringing that along. So it depends. If you're B2B, it's very much more reaching out, and we're having those sort of more in business development conversations. Separately, Natural Drums was the first one that we took to that creator audience. So you might have noticed that our messaging had then completely changed, because we're out on socials and it's all Natural Drums. This is great, this is easy, but that was all around community. So what we didn't do was launch Natural Drums. What we actually launched was our open beta community, where we invited people to come and test.
Okay, so I'm going to try and play that back to make sure I understand that correctly.
Yeah.
So there's a brand that is DAACI that's about like a bright group of people who are building AI music. You know, ultimately your long-term goal is that you want that to be technology that's powering other people's experiences, because you're at a fundamental level. But at various times in your journey, to help you get traction and do what you've got to do, you've split out a particular bit and you're giving it its own brand and its own communication, because that's going to feed back in and effectively be a case study for what you're expecting other people to do.
You're doing that with your hands, and that's exactly it.
Okay, sorry, Rob, you were going to say something.
Sorry, I'm on mute. So I mean, that sort of story and that dichotomy between these two brands, did you do that because you thought you would get less of a less interest because of DAACI? Because I mean, obviously we do the same thing where we'd use the power up. It seems acceptable to do powered by, but the moment you just, DAACI, whatever the brand is, it doesn't get kind of traction in the same way. It's just an odd space. I've never really understood it.
Yeah, it's when we were talking about it, we went around that, and actually, funny enough, you called it Natural Beats, Simon, and it was called Natural Beats for a while, and then
that's what I thought.
Now I don't think I'll be giving too much away, but I think the beats could incorporate things like percussion and things like that. So hot off the press, but things like that might come later. But that's why we said drums, because this is very much triggering drum instruments, although technically it can trigger other instruments in your door as well. But yeah, to go back to your point there, powered by DAACI, I think really if we look at what we were trying to say is we've got that tech and that is our offering, those conversations happening. But for that audience to see Natural Drums, it does have the DAACI logo on it, but it wasn't about us. It's not this DAACI, it's what did they want? And we saw that they wanted something simple. Natural was a play on words with the natural music sign. Plus, so musicians were nodding and getting it. The team were like, yeah, okay, we're getting that it's got some notation element to it. Maybe it's in my world. But yeah, it wasn't really the DAACI, the brand that needed to be front and center. Where the sort of trust behind it was where we went.
So do you think you had, do you think you created different profiles in terms of users for it in that sense?
They were always in our consciousness.
Yeah.
They became higher in our targets of who we're talking to. So yeah, we always had them as these are people that are in our world, creators. And also if you think about the whole Natural series, that does incorporate, license holders, it does incorporate people who are going to be working with the tools going forward. So basically it was that audience of creators, composers, artists, and also music rights holders that were in our mind when we were.
Yeah. So your primary audience, I guess, for one brand is slightly tweaked in terms of their desires and needs for,
Yeah, exactly. And going back to what I was saying earlier, it's a very responsive sort of plan, as opposed to, okay, we're going to do this and then we'll do this and then they'll buy that and then we'll get that. It's more, especially with the community led thing, we're actually bringing in and really getting that very organic element to it, and just generally being received, thank goodness, really well. So yeah, we're going to continue.
Brilliant, thank you. So I want to pick, so Emilie's got different challenges, I would imagine. Yeah, which is like, how do you take this brand called Beatport, which is doing different things with business objectives that you've got going forward. You're probably thinking in year time spans now, in years, in terms of what you're trying to do. How do you deal with that when you've got so much heritage and you kind of know what you are? So what's your continual process that you're going through? Or maybe, you know, I'm not wanting you to give any secrets, but what kind of things are you considering at the moment?
So okay, we have, obviously the Beatport group is made up of like 7 different businesses, and these businesses all have kind of like their own brands and their own kind of communications in themselves. So like with our producer group, we have Loop Masters, Loop Cloud, Plugin Boutique. These are all like brands which have been created in their own right. And then, you know, if I flip over to the DJ side, we've got like Beat Source, DJ City, and Beatport. So, you know, we've got all of the, and we've got music services as well with our Amp Suite and Label Radar products. So with all of these different brands, we're actually at the moment a bit of a house of brands as opposed to a branded house. And we're kind of like we're in the process of doing a rebrand actually at the moment. So we've started going through and thinking about like the way in which we're coming across to our customers, how do we interact with them, and you know, our visual identity and all of these kind of things. But if I bring it back to the very beginning of brand, which is that branding is a marathon and it's not a sprint. And what it is like a unique promise which is kept over time, told through stories which resonate with our consumers. So when we think about that, it kind of takes it away from it just being the logo or the typography. It's actually, brand is a number of different attributes which are made up within our consumer's mind, which allow them to have an emotional connection with us. And therefore, we live rent-free in their brain. So if they go, hey, I need to go buy music for my set, Beatport comes top of mind. And so when we think about like over the coming years and what the future looks like, our future kind of looks like creating these kind of like, or making sure that we're sticking with 2 key elements, which is being consistent and also being relevant. And by consistency, I mean, like, we make sure that all of our distinctive assets are the same. We create those memory structures that are the same, that consumers can link to. And by that, I mean like logos, tone of voice, etc. We create a brand personality, and we always are inherently connecting to a universal human need, right? So if we stay consistent in those spaces, that's a really strong part for us. And then this on the flip side, we also need to make sure we're relevant. So making sure that we're continuously looking at our customers, what their wants and needs are, and making sure that we're, you know, being relevant to them. You know, technology changes very quickly, social platforms change, music distribution changes, music trends change. So it's making sure that we're still relevant in those spaces. Trends as well, not just music trends, but like other ways in which people interact with music, whether that's, you know, during COVID and we were all going to lockdown, we suddenly have to start doing live streaming, versus now the world has opened up and we need to now be servicing those physical spaces like festivals and gigs. Being true with like new offerings, like constantly innovating. I know Sophie spoke about that earlier, but that's a key to being relevant, like innovating our products and services so that we are still like relevant in the space, and pulling that all together with also creating relevant campaigns. So making sure that our messaging is constantly like changing and making sure that we're evolving as a brand. So they're the kind of 2 core needs that from us as a business that we're like hyper focusing on to make sure as a brand we are being consistent and also being relevant.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I'm not. Are we 2 minutes over, Matt, or are we 2 minutes over?
No, not at all. We've got until 2 o'clock if you wish to continue.
Oh,
then.
have we? Okay. I think we will pause. So, thank you very much, the 3 of you, and I think that the objective of this was really to have the conversation about, if you want to do this properly, the things that you've got to think about are really quite at the core principles of what you are really in some way, shape or form. And Chantel isn't on the call, but the trigger for this session was her saying on the last session that she'd wasted like £100,000 over the last 5 years on marketing. and she didn't think that she got any value out of it. Yeah. So this session was to go, okay, if you're going to go and spend that amount of money, how do you approach it? And I think we've achieved that, which is really with a bit of thought, with a bit of discussion, with a bit of clarity and a sense of purpose. So thank you very much for the insight that you've brought to that.